Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my Game Week 1 League 1 review. If you do want to enjoy today's video, please make sure to drop a like on there for me and subscribe to the channel as well. If you are new, 200 likes on the first episode of the new series will be massively appreciated. And don't forget to get your thoughts in down in the comment section down below. How did your team get on this week and how are you feeling after Game Week 1? There's obviously 12 matches for us to go through and review, so let's get straight into it. We'll start out firstly then with the Friday night kickoff between Luton Town and AFC Wimbledon. Now, unfortunately, I couldn't watch this game, but having watched the highlights back, it seems like I've not really missed much, in all honesty. The only goal of the game was actually scored by a Wimbledon man. Obviously, Ryan Johnson headed home a long ball from Nahki Wells. It was a brilliant header, to be fair, just for the wrong side, off the underside of the crossbar, and then with just 5 minutes left on the clock. But looking at the stats from the game and looking at the highlights as well, we're seeing highlights of people just running forwards and losing the ball. Not even shots happening in the game. Just one shot on target in the entire match. I feel like this is going to be a common theme with Wimbledon this season, where they just try and nick a 1-0 win like what they did last campaign, but I really do worry for them. Luton, they didn't massively impress, but obviously Wimbledon, they're not an easy side to break down. We saw that last campaign, but there's just a real lack of goal scoring ability, chance creation in this Wimbledon side. I do think their team as of right now is considerably weaker than where they were at the end of last campaign. Luton, there's a lot of quality in this side, but there has been a fair few changes as well from last season, so it might take them a little bit of time to click. There's not really much else to add. Obviously, the league table does put Luton in 12th. It has Wimbledon down in 19th, but after game week 1, we can't really look into it all too much. A great way to start the season, though, for Luton, and not the worst way to start for Wimbledon. You know, I think a lot of people were maybe expecting Luton to win this game quite comfortably. Wimbledon frustrated. There was positive to take, but I feel like it's going to be a bit of a common theme this season where Wimbledon just struggle to get over the line and they lose a lot of games 1 or 2-0. Next up then, we'll go to the Saturday early kickoff where Cardiff City began their League 1 campaign with a 2-1 victory over Peterborough United. Now, I caught the first half of this game and it was largely dominated by Cardiff, but they looked a little bit toothless at the top end of the pitch, and eventually Peterborough would be awarded a penalty for a foul on Declan Frith. I definitely do believe it was a spot kick. I think the number 48, I think it was, for Cardiff, Lawler, was very unlucky not to receive a second yellow card for that offence, and then it was Bradley Ihonveen. It was Bradley who then stepped up to convert the penalty. I thought he was definitely Peterborough's best player in that first half. For the large part, the rest of that Peterborough squad, I think, massively really struggled against Cardiff, a lot of times looking disjointed and going forward, not really offering much threat apart from Bradley himself, who I think at the back end of last season was told by Darren Ferguson, Ferguson came out publicly and said that he had no future at Peterborough, but he looked a real handful in that first half. Having now watched the highlights of the second period as well, Ruben Colwill obviously equalised just 3 minutes into the second half with a stunning free kick, absolutely fantastic strike, straight into the top corner, and then just 12 minutes later, Kapakiao would score the winner, and it was a great whip strike. Maybe the Peterborough goalkeeper will be a little bit disappointed that he's got a hand to it, and it's still then gone through him, but it was still a brilliant finish, and I think definitely a deserved 3 points for Cardiff. They had a load more chances in the match as well. Looking at the stats from the game, Peterborough not really having much of the ball, not really doing much with it when they did have it. Cardiff, as you would expect them to do, to be honest, they dominated the game, and I think definitely did deserve the 3 points. Obviously, you look at the average age of both squads, they are two very, very young teams, but I am very worried about Peterborough this season, especially with Sam Hughes being out injured for around 3 months or so. That is a big loss for them, but I'd say on the whole, a deserved win for Cardiff City, and one that they needed to get off with. Having such a poor season last year, they were obviously booed off at half-time at work, Cardiff. They needed to get off with a win. They've done that, and it's positive signs for them, definitely. Into the Saturday 3 p.m. kickoffs then, Stevenage came away from Blackpool with a brilliant 3-2 victory. There was a fair few mistakes in this game from both sides. Blackpool opened up the scoring on just 6 minutes, bit of a mistake from new signing Jordan Horton at the back, allowed Honeyman to then just whip a shot right into the front post, and I think the Blackpool keeper will be a little bit, not the Blackpool keeper, the Stevenage keeper will be a little bit disappointed with that one. Then Fraser Horsfall, had a bit of a short back pass. Jamie Reid then rounded Bailey Peacock Farrell, and from a really tight angle finished very well, I thought. And then just before half time, in the 10th minute of added time in the first half. Stevenage were then awarded a penalty. I think it was Michael Ihekwe was adjudged to have handballed. The free kick came into the box. Pierre Gianni was challenging. I do think it probably was a penalty, in all honesty. I don't think he's meant to do it, but when your hands up here, it's always going to be given as a spot kick. And then Jamie Reid, pretty poor penalty, in all honesty. Bailey Peacock-Farrell seems to get his body behind it and can only parry it into the top corner. I do think that was pretty poor goalkeeping. And then just 5 minutes into the second half, again, poor distribution from Bailey Peacock-Farrell. Plays it straight into Jordan Roberts. He then plays it to Dan Kemp, who's always going to score from 12 yards out. Great finish from him. Blackpool did pull a goal back just 11 minutes from time. Great through ball from Jordan Brown. And then Niall Ennis, I think, just caught Carl Piergiani napping, and then he just a pretty simple finish for somebody of Niall Ennis's quality. It's kind of beginning this season where he ended last season with the Seaside as his first goal since joining on a permanent basis. For Blackpool, a really disappointing way to start out the campaign, conceding 3 pretty sloppy goals, in all honesty. And obviously the league table, it has Stevenage up in 6th, Blackpool down in 13th. Next up then, we go to my team Bradford City, picking up their first 3 points for the season with a 2-1 victory against last season's playoff semi-final losers in Wycombe Wanderers. Really happy with the first half performance here. Anthony Sarsvik opens the scoring on 6 minutes. Stephen Humphries picks up the ball on the left-hand side, drops a step over, gets off a shot. It's spilled by the Wycombe goalkeeper. He definitely should be claiming that, and Anthony Sarsvik is there to head home. Obviously, he was the man who scored the goal that got Bradford City promoted into League One, so it's only written in the stars that he then scores the first goal to begin our League One campaign. Just, I think, 7 minutes after that, we would double our lead. Some nice play again down the right-hand side. Eventually, the ball is worked to Stephen Humphries, who had some good hold-up play on the edge of the penalty area. He lays it off to Bobby Poynton. A low, hard strike into the bottom right corner. Doubled our lead, and it was pretty much the perfect start. You couldn't have asked for much more. In the first half, we were absolutely brilliant. Then the second half came around, and we got a little bit sloppy, a little bit tired. We gave away a pretty cheap free kick, really. It was an off-the-ball incident from Joe Wright. From that free kick, they did then pull a goal back. It was Mr. Dan Udo himself who said he was going to give some to Curtis Tilt and Matthew Pennington. We just completely switched off. Sam Walker should definitely save it. And yeah, it would then made for a very nervy final 22 minutes plus 5 additionals as well. We didn't make enough substitutions for me. Just the one sub on the 76th minute. We were certainly very tired in a lot of positions, and we've got a strong bench this year, so I think Alexander could maybe have referred to the bench, but I can kind of understand also not wanting to just throw them on for the sake of it in such a high pressure situation. And for me, a great way to start the season. You're never going to complain when you do pick up the 3 points. In terms of the stats, Wycombe dominated the possession, but just did nothing with it, especially in the first half. 68% of the ball, 2 shots, 1 on target. It goes to show, as always, like what I was saying last year when we were speaking about MK Dons or Notts County, possession is the most meaningless stat in football. Because, yeah, they dominated the ball, but we created more XG. We had more shots, more on target, much more big chances. Just after they pulled their goal back, Tommy Lee whipped in a brilliant ball, David Beckham-esque, right into the path of Stephen Humphries, 5 or 6 yards out, and somehow the Wycombe goalkeeper produced a very, very good save from that one. Following that result, then it does leave us just outside of the playoffs at the moment. We are 8th in the table at this moment in time, although some places might also have us down as 7th because alphabetically we would maybe be above Cardiff. In terms of Wycombe, they're down in 15th. I am worried about them. I think Mike Dodds will be amongst one of the first managers to be sacked. Yes, there's a project there, but without Richard Coney in that squad, there's a number of players in this team that I don't think were particularly great. I thought Grimmer at right back massively struggled with our threat. Josh Nerfield for us was outstanding. Curtis Tilt was very good. Tommy Lee and Max Power in the midfield were great. Pretty much anybody who played was very impressive, but for Wycombe, there was very few players who really did stand out, and I'm a little bit concerned about them in all honesty. But from a Bradford City point of view, absolutely brilliant way to start the season. Burton Albion began their League One campaign with a 2-1 victory over Mansfield Town. It took them, about 15 games last season to win, and they've done it at the first time of asking this time around. A brace from Charlie Webster, 2 brilliant strikes from outside of the penalty area. The first one was certainly the pick of the bunch though for me. Great strike right into the top corner. I think Mansfield will be a little bit disappointed that they didn't get enough pressure on the ball. You could say that about both of the Burton goals, but Webster found the top corner. The second one just 5 minutes into the second half. Some nice play on the edge of the area, and Webster opens up his body. I'm pretty sure it bounces before going into the goal, and I think maybe Liam Roberts will be a little bit disappointed that he didn't get closer to that one, but you can't take nothing away from the strike. Bailey Cargill did pull a goal back, a great left-footed in-swinging cross from Stephen McLaughlin, and Cargill, it would have been harder to miss than score from there. Mansfield had some good chances in the game. Burton also had some further good chances. I feel like Will Evans should have probably scored inside the first 30 seconds, and he put it straight at the Burton goalkeeper. Looking at the stats from the match then, Mansfield had a little bit more possession and created the better XG, but as you can see, Burton were certainly more clinical on the game. It looked like a little bit more of an interesting watch with there being 24 shots in this one than the Luton Wimbledon match, for example. But a great way to start the season for the Brewers. As for Mansfield, I feel like they got their midfield selection a little bit wrong in this game. I feel like there wasn't enough creativity in there. I think you've got to start somebody like a George Maris, especially away from home. They just lacked any real drive in there. I feel like McLaughlin probably will work his way back into the side as well. But I feel like for the first game of the season, a lot of clubs, whatever their starting 11 is, it normally changes a lot, doesn't it, come the end of the campaign. But look at the player ratings that the Burton players were given here. They clearly all did play very well in that one. And in terms of the league table, then it has Burton up in 10th at the moment, Mansfield down in 16th, but as always, the league table means diddly squat after game week 1. But it's just positive for Burton to finally have a bit of positivity at the start of the season, and they're not going to have to wait 10 games for them to maybe score a goal. Doncaster Rovers began life in League 1 with a 1-0 victory at home to Exeter City. The only goal of the game coming 2 minutes from time from the penalty spot from last season's player of the season in Luke Molyneux. Now, the penalty decision for me, it is incredibly harsh, and if you're an Exeter fan, I'm sure you're going to be very disappointed with that. Did Doncaster deserve to win the game? I think it's fair to say that they did. Did they deserve to win it in the manner that they did? Probably not. Doncaster had a load of really good chances in the game. I think the best one probably fell to, I'm pretty sure number 19 is Damola Ajayi. I can't actually see his number, but he had an open goal at one point. It was a great block on the line from the Exeter defender, but the penalty decision, it's given for handball. He's kind of jumped like this. I know we kind of spoke briefly about a similar sort of thing not too many games ago, but I don't know. I think it is extremely harsh. Well taken though from Luke Molyneux, and like I say, Doncaster did create a wealth of good chances in this game. Look at the statistics. I mean, the highlights shows it to be a much more of an even game, but Doncaster absolutely battered them. Loads more XG, loads more possession, shots, just the 3 on target as well, which I think will be a little bit disappointing, but Exeter have barely laid a glove on Doncaster, and I think after that game they can now see why a lot of people are backing Exeter to go down this season, because they've just not got enough quality in that squad. Looking at both teams' lineups, apparently Fitzwater's had a great game. Was maybe he the man who did the block on the line? I'm not really so sure, but Doncaster looking pretty solid defensively. Oriorden, by all accounts, had a great game. I don't think Luke Molyneux played in that position. I think him and Clifton were certainly swapped around. Pearson, it sounds like, will head and kick everything, but certainly is a little bit slow, and there is some question marks over some of these attackers, in my opinion, because I just think they are a little bit of a downgrade on Rob Street, for example, last campaign. In terms of the league table then, as always, not really much to speak about at this stage of the season. Doncaster are in 11th, Exeter are in 18th. One thing that there is to note, there wasn't a single draw in any game this week. Out of all 12 matches, not a single one of them ended in a draw. Hopefully that's a sign of more things to come, because you never really want to see draws, especially 0-0s. They're the most boring thing on the planet. I agree with whatever footballer said that 0-0s shouldn't equate to any points, because what's the point? It's a waste of everybody's time. Let me know your thoughts on that down below. Make sure to like, comment and subscribe as well. Those dirty dog botherers, they got off to a brilliant start with a fantastic 3-0 win at home to Leyton Orient, a fixture which I'm pretty sure was the final game of last season, where Orient came away from it with a 4-1 win. It goes to show about the transfer window, really, that both of these clubs have had. Now, Joe Lowe opened the scoring after just 7 minutes. Herbie Kane whips in a pretty decent free kick, and Lowe's just got the freedom of the Orient penalty area. It's absolutely awful defending. He's got a free header about 6 yards out, and he puts that into the back of the net. 10 minutes into the second half, Huddersfield were awarded a penalty. I think it was Sean Clare who was adjudged to have fouled Ben Wiles. Again, pretty stonewall penalty for me, and Alfie May did convert that emphatically, open up his body, lots of power into the bottom corner, sending, I can only assume, Tommy Simkin the wrong way, and I think that's the first time in a long long while that Huddersfield have scored a penalty at home, and then the game was wrapped up, put beyond any doubt, in the 95th minute. Joe Taylor has the ball on the edge of the box. It looks like to me he takes on a shot, and eventually it just turns into a great pass into Ruskin, who converts very nicely. He came on in 24th minute for Sean Rowan, who picked up an injury, having played every single minute last season for Lincoln City. In terms of the stats from the game then, Orient had some good chances. Aaron Connolly missed a few really good opportunities in this one. Orient dominated possession, but Huddersfield had more XG, had way more shots on target, created more big chances, had more corners, all that sort of stuff. It was a pretty comfortable win for Huddersfield. Leighton Orient just, I think, acclimatising to life with their new squad. There has clearly been a lot of changes from last campaign. They're obviously missing Omar Beckles at the back as well. There's been a lot of new signings. It is going to take a while for them to gel. Yes, Huddersfield have also made a lot of new signings. It's pretty much an entirely new squad, apart from Wiles and Kane and maybe Miller in there as well. I can't be 100% sure when Miller did sign, but there is a load of debutants in that Huddersfield squad, but the standard, obviously, of the Huddersfield signings is a lot better than Leighton Orient. In terms of the league table, then, those Dirty Dog Botherers are top of the table at this moment in time, and that obviously will leave Leighton Orient at the bottom, but Orient really struggled at the start of last campaign. It took them 12 matches, something like that, to really get going, and eventually they ended up finishing in the playoffs. So I'm not concerned about them. They've still got one of the best managers in the league. Huddersfield, there's a lot of questions and expectations really around them this season, but they've got off to a flyer in this one, very disappointingly so. Lincoln City got off to a great start with a 2-0 victory at home to Reading FC. I feel like this is a really solid way to start the campaign for Lincoln. Obviously, the first goal is credited as an own goal to Finlay Burns. A great long ball, I think it's from Wickens, the Lincoln keeper, sends Rob Street in down the right-hand side, and I thought, from looking at the first angle, Street had just caught the keeper out. The keeper was clearly expecting the cross, and Street had just caught him out and shot at the near post. But looking at the angle from behind the goal, it clearly is redirected by Finlay Burns, and yeah, really disappointing moment for him, but great for Rob Street to get some kind of goal contribution. I know it's not technically a goal or an assist, but he played a big part in that, and a lot of credit needs to go to the goalkeeper as well. And the game was wrapped up in the second half. Long ball, I think, from Conor McGrandles. Rico Hackett had the freedom of the Lincoln Stadium. I can't remember the stadium name off the top of my head, but he had the freedom of it just to take his time, pick his spot, and roll the ball into the back of the net. Lewis Wing hit the post on a couple of occasions from Reading. He's clearly going to be their biggest threat this season from midfield, but I feel like both of these teams are going to want to be pushing towards the playoffs this campaign, but maybe could do with another addition or two in their squads. In terms of the stats from this game, then, Reading dominated possession, but again, possession does mean nothing. Look at the XG. That means a lot more. Reading had a few more shots, but both teams only having a 2 on target. Obviously, Lincoln scored with both of their shots on target. And in terms of the league table, then, it has the Imps up in 5th at this moment in time. Reading down in the relegation zone, second bottom as of right now, but obviously they're not going to finish there come the end of the campaign. Great way to start the season though for the Imps, and a bit of a disappointing one for the Royals. Barnsley began their first full season under Conor Hourihane with a 3-1 victory away at Plymouth Argyle. The perfect start really for Barnsley. Just as I predicted the other day, I knew Barnsley were going to come away from this match with 3 points. Obviously the opening goal is another own goal. There was a fair few on the opening weekend. I think it's a free kick, comes into the box, and Brendan Weirdo just can't sort his feet out. There's no real pressure on him, and he diverts the ball into the back of his own net. Then a long ball is played forward. Plymouth just failed to deal with it. Eventually it drops to around the edge of the box, where Adam Phillips, with an absolutely superb strike, brilliant volley into the back of the net, doing what he's always done and scored goals in League One. Then there was a bit of a coming together between Jack Shepherd and Brendan Weirdo. For me, I think it was more Weirdo instigating that rather than Jack Shepherd, but both players were booked for that incident. Plymouth then did pull a goal back just 5 minutes into the second half. Well taken from Caleb Watts, who I thought led the line very well. To say he's not a striker, I thought did quite well. Obviously did have the ball in the back of the net quite early on in the game, but that was ruled out for a foul. I'm not 100% sure is my honest assessment of that, but on the whole, I thought Watts was definitely Plymouth's best player on the day. Jack Shepherd was then sent off in the 63rd minute. Maybe he just wants to come back to Bradford so desperately that he's doing anything he can to not play for Barnsley. All jokes aside though, that is never a second bookable offence in a million years, considering his first yellow is for something which he didn't instigate, and you can see multiple times he's going like this, putting his hands up because he doesn't want any involvement in it. Then to give that as a second bookable offence, it's not an intentional handball. Yes, it hits his hand. Maybe it's not in a natural position, but it's not denied a clear and obvious goal scoring opportunity. So I feel like a second yellow card for that, given the standard of the yellow card for his first one, is incredibly harsh from the referee, but it didn't stop Barnsley from going on to secure all 3 points, as Davis Keeler Dunn would do what he does best, and he wrapped the game up just 4 minutes from time with a well-taken goal. Brilliant start to life for Conor Hourihane in his first full season at Barnsley. I knew they were going to win this game. A nightmare start though for Tom Cleverley and Plymouth Argyle. Looking at the teams, it's clear for all to see that Plymouth needs some quality in that final third. They need to bring some more strikers in. As for Barnsley, there's no doubt there's a lot of quality in this 11, but then when you look at the quality and strength and depth in the team, there's not too much of it. They still need to bring in about 5 or 6 more additions for me at Barnes if they're really going to want to compete for the top 6 come the end of the campaign. But don't be surprised if when Barnsley have got pretty much a full strength 11 available, they go and away from home against some of the better teams or some of the more favoured sides and they pick up the 3 points. As for Plymouth, nightmare start for them, especially being the home side. Barnsley are up in 3rd. Plymouth are just outside of the relegation zone at this moment in time, but I feel like for Barnsley, they're going to be absolutely buzzing after that. They're probably still not even home yet, some of their fans. Port Vale began their League One journey this time round with a 2-1 defeat away at Rotherham United. Sam Nombe opened the scoring after just 13 minutes, an outstanding cross into the box from Joe Rafferty, and Nombe with a great volley into the back of the net. I think Jesse Deborah will be very disappointed that he didn't make it a little bit harder for the former Exeter man. Nombe though would double his tally and Rotherham's advantage in the match just 16 minutes later. I think it's a corner comes into the box. It's then headed back across goal at the far post, and I'm pretty sure it's Marco Morosi who is in goal for this one. He decides to try and punch it, gets absolutely nowhere with it, and it just allows Sam Nombe for free header, douche straight into the back of the net, and that was pretty much all she wrote from a Rotherham point of view. Jaheim Headley did get himself a straight red card 3 minutes after that. Sam Nombe picks up the ball. Headley's then gone in for a tackle after a bit of a heavy touch, and he's clearly gone over the ball. You know, his foot has physically rolled over the ball to make the tackle. I don't think he can really have many complaints with that, but Port Vale would pull a goal back 15 minutes into the second half. A great delivery from Mitch Clark, and Connor Hall is there at the back post, a right back crossing to a centre half along the floor, but anyway, he taps in at the back post to pull a goal back, and Port Vale were applying the pressure. Then it would be Zach Jules who would receive a second yellow card for stopping a promising Port Vale attack. Laurent Talai had a great opportunity in the last minute where he hit the post from, but Rotherham managed to grind it out. I thought it was going to be a pretty comfortable win for Port Vale, but given the red cards and the pretty sloppy defending really from a Port Vale point of view, I said they needed to improve on their defence this summer. They haven't done that, and that does concern me about them a little bit coming into this season. Looking at the stats, Port Vale had a lot of opportunities. To say they had 10 men for around an hour or so. I don't know how many of them really came in the second half. Quite a lot of them in the first half didn't really lay a glove on Rotherham, and they kind of got the job done in that first half. I'm getting very similar vibes to the Bradford versus Wycombe game. But even looking at the Port Vale lineup, having Byers and Shipley in the midfield, not having Crowsdale in there, I think is very bizarre. Not having Garrity in there, I can only assume that Garrity was injured for this game. He wasn't named on the bench, so I can only assume that he was. And not having Walters on the bench as well, again, I can only assume that he's injured. But not starting Crowsdale, I think is a very, very poor move, but I don't think he would have really played much of a part in either goal. They're both individual errors, really, and the first one is obviously a lot of quality, but starting Ben Waine as well, I'm just baffled a little bit by a few of Darren Moore's choices in this one, who is obviously former Sheffield Wednesday manager, so he got quite a lot of abuse in this one. And the final Saturday 3 o'clock kickoff then saw Wigan Athletic dispatch Northampton Town pretty comfortably with a 3-1 win. Hungbo put in a great cross from the left-hand side for Fraser Murray to have a first-time volley into the bottom corner just before the half-an-hour mark to open the scoring. Then the hosts would double their advantage just before half-time. Corner comes in, left-footed in swinger again from Hungbo, and Jensen Weir flicks on at the near post. I think Northampton will be very disappointed conceding from a set piece, and I think the goalkeeper as well could have done a little bit better with it. The second half then began not even 15 seconds into it. The Wigan winger, that was for some reason very hard to say, Fraser Murray, would get his second of the game. He picks it up on the right hand side, cuts in on the left foot, takes on a shot. It does take a slight deflection, and that probably wrong foots the Northampton goalkeeper. At that point, the game definitely is done, but the Cobblers did manage to pull a goal back on the 70th minute mark. Corner comes into the box, well worked routine to be fair, and eventually it allows Forbes to have pretty much a free header into the back of the net. Darrell Costello, former Bradford City man, but obviously spent last season on loan with the Cobblers, had a great opportunity towards the back end of the match. Open goal, free header, 2 yards out maybe, somehow managed to put it wide, and that is the Costello that we've all, especially Bradford City fans, have known to grow and hate, I think is certainly the best way to put it. But thankfully from a Wigan point of view, it didn't really matter. Northampton didn't really lay a glove on Wigan in this one. It was total domination, despite the Cobblers having a little bit more possession than the Ticks in that one. Looking at the lineups from this game then, Costello obviously did get the start, no Paul Mullin in the starting 11, but you look at the Northampton squad, Bradford City have got the Cobblers to play next Saturday. There's just not much final third quality in this side, especially when you're relying on Ethan Wheatley and Tom Eaves to score your goals. I'm feeling pretty confident going into next week to say that we weren't great away from home last campaign. Given how both of these sides have started, I'm looking forward to next week. In terms of the league table then, it has Wigan up in the top 2 at this moment in time. Great start to the campaign for them. As for the Cobblers, they are currently in the bottom 4, and I would back them probably finishing in there come the end of the campaign. I feel like there's not much that's right with the bottom 4 at the moment, if anything really, but Northampton being in there does feel like it's probably going to be the same come match week 48, to be honest. Not 48, 46. And finally then, we had today's Sunday 12 o'clock kickoff between Stockport County and Bolton Wanderers. Now, my plan was to watch this game. I caught the first half and then fell asleep when the second half did begin, but for the large part, I thought the first half was dominated by Bolton Wanderers. They lacked a clinical edge in the final third. I felt like they probably should have had a penalty as well when Corey O'Keefe, I think pretty clearly, drags back Mason Burst after some nice play from the Bolton winger. He was definitely probably my man of the match. I know your TV sort of companies always give it to a winning team, but I was really impressed with Kozia Dubary on that right-hand side. In terms of the first goal then, it was scored by Malik Mothersill. Some nice play from Stockport, then it's a bit scrappy inside the penalty area. Eventually Bolton clear it to the edge of the box where Ollie Norwood does take a shot on. It's going well wide, but eventually it kind of just hits Malik Mothersill, or he pokes a foot towards the ball and he deflects it into the back of the net to score just before half time, when you have been pretty poor, I think is exactly what Stockport did need. And the game was eventually wrapped up by Kyle Wootton in the 89th minute. A great free kick coming into the box from Danny Andrew, who I think only signed a 1-month contract with the club yesterday. Great ball in, and a classic textbook Kyle Wootton header into the back of the net to give Stockport the perfect start to the season. You know, Bolton at home is not an easy game whatsoever, and I feel like Bolton really did just lack a bit of end product in that final third at times as well. I think Bolton could do with bringing a striker in through the door. Looking at the stats from the game then, as you can see, my point about Bolton being the better side is certainly backed up here, especially when you look at the first half. Stockport didn't really create all too much, in all honesty, but Bolton 15 shots, just 2 on target, really looking toothless in that final third. Again, looking at the lineups then for both sides, Stockport, their team is looking very strong. They could maybe do with another winger in my opinion, but in terms of Bolton, obviously Mendes Gomes had to start this one because Gale isn't quite 100% match fit. Ethan Herhan, who's obviously come in from Lincoln, even he couldn't get into the starting 11 in this one. But we've got to remember, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Yes, Stockport have got off to a great start here. Yes, Bolton have got off to a poor start. I would expect both teams to comfortably be in that top 6, if not a top 4, come the end of the campaign. And obviously at the moment, it does have Stockport up in 4th. It has Bolton down in the relegation zone, but I could almost bet this entire channel that Bolton are not going to finish in the bottom 4 come the end of the season. Now, after around 10 games or so, there'll be a little bit of an in-between bit between the final game and the outro where we'll go through and look at the league table, but after one match, it means nothing. Bradford are not in the bottom 4, and that is all that does matter at the moment. But great starts out to the season for the likes of Huddersfield, Wigan, Barnsley and Stockport. Obviously, poor start to the campaign for Orient, Reading, Bolton and Northampton, but plenty of time still left in this League One campaign. Join me on every Sunday for the League One round up, and obviously if there's any midweek matches, then you'll join me on the Wednesday as well for that. But make sure you are subscribed to the channel for plenty more League One content this season. We've got reviews, predictions, and everything else in between of that as well. Drop a like if you did enjoy. 200 likes on Game Week 1's review would be massively appreciated. And don't forget to get your thoughts in down below. How did your team get on in Game Week 1, and how are you feeling going into Game Week 2? Thank you all for watching. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you very soon for another one.